Good morning, everyone. Very glad to be here with this extraordinarily distinguished panel. Since we're already a little behind schedule, I think that argues in favor of my usual MO, which is to move quickly, briskly, keep everyone awake, and get you on to lunch close to on time. Let me quickly introduce our panelists. Terrence Truax, Managing Partner, Jenner & Block. Jami McKeon, Chair of Morgan Lewis and Bockius. Kim Coopersmith, the Chairperson of Akin Gump, Strauss Hauer and Feld. And on my far right, Seth Zachary, the Chairman of Paul Hastings. Those law firms obviously need no introduction, and here are the people who, to one degree or another, run those law firms. And we're here to talk about the tremendous flux in the business of law, the business of providing legal services, and how these august and very successful institutions are charting their course through these choppy waters, and with a particular focus on innovations underway at the moment to respond to pricing pressure and other forms of competition. And we'll go through a very quick first round with each person describing some of those innovations, successes, failures also welcome. They're often equally edifying. And then we'll come back and try a second round. Terry, you want to start us off? We'll just go down the line.
Sure, Paul, be happy to. I think it's interesting to talk about innovation because we were talking before we came out here, talking to a group of lawyers about how to innovate. Is an interesting concept because lawyers, by definition, as we all know, are very risk averse. And I will say at our law firm, Jenner & Block, it's a terrific place, but it's a group of lawyers. So I've learned that I've been held the job of managing partner for about a year, and I've learned that getting people to think about change, everybody's good about talking about it. Everybody wants to be innovative. Who doesn't want to be innovative and fresh? But then when you sort of push through the most modest of proposed changes, and we could give you a litany of examples. I'm sure all four of us up here could. You get obviously lots of individual and even institutional resistance.
Examples are always fun. Just give us one.
Well, for example, I have a partner, and I don't want to do any disservice to BlackBerry, but we were rolling out a new technology platform that required people with the older versions of BlackBerries that had the very, very old version of BlackBerry to move to a different model. And I had a number of partners, some of whom you would know, I'm certain, who were all big about, yes, we want innovation, but the minute I suggested to them that they had to give up their old BlackBerry and get a new BlackBerry, oh my goodness, they just, that just cannot happen. When we think, though, about innovation in our law firm, I will start with this, because everybody does talk about innovating. The practice of law, though, and maybe we'll talk about this at the end, Paul, we start with not deviating, though, from the core values of our firm. I think there's certain things that are embodied in all of the firms that are sitting up here, and I'm sure out here in the room, but things like commitments to excellence and commitments to your clients. We at Jenner have a very deep, abiding commitment to pro bono and public service. And those sorts of things don't get lost when you're innovating. Innovating doesn't mean that you lose your focus on those issues. Generally, I'd say there's three areas where we're looking at. None of these are rocket science. I'm sure many of you have been thinking about these or implementing them. But in the areas of law firm staffing, obviously, that's been a huge change. And we've seen that change in the 90s to 2000, and it's only accelerated. And in my view, I think it's only going to continue to accelerate. In our own firm, where we have different structures, where you have partners, and of course different levels of partners, equity and non-equity partners in our firm, but where you have obviously associates and different tracks now for associates migrating their way up to partner. We have obviously a counsel function, and even more recently we've adopted a kind of an in-house document review function, which many firms already have, but it's just another level of staffing, all to address the issue of cost. And we do that, though, without compromising, without losing sight of this unbending commitment to excellence and quality that we must project out to the clients, consumers that we're working with. Secondly, we're very focused, and I'm sure you'll hear the four of us talk today about technology. That's a huge driver, and I continue to believe that we're on the front edge of this. We were again talking before the break about things like email. Emails, our firm, 20 years ago didn't have email. It was just on the very front edge of it. Voicemail, go back and somebody maybe will, go back and think about when voicemail was first implemented and some of the resistance to that, amazingly. But technologies today where we're pushing out all kinds of things. In our firm, for example, we're creating a virtual platform to make it very easy and flexible for people to be able to have a platform that they can use their technology from anywhere, but also meets the security demands of many of our clients. And many of you know this, but we now, like many law firms, get audited for our security protocols. And we take great care and spend great energy on that issue, but we have to build a platform that's going to be nimble enough to allow us to meet the demands of our client base, which is based all over the world. And as third point I would sort of roll out that we're very focused on is the issue of project management. Even in the very high-end space that our firm strives to compete in, for that smaller slice of work, clients, and you heard some of them up here I think in the last hour, talking about their, the issue of price and rate sensitivity, even on the premium work in some instances. We've got to find ways without compromising quality to be able to deliver value. And in our view, even on these very premium, high-end engagements, whether they're litigation engagements or transactional engagements, there is typically a piece of those very large engagements which are still commodity-type work. And for us, we see that as a challenge to be able to pull that commodity piece out, price it appropriately so we're getting value to our client, but still delivering the very high-end premium work at the right price point that we believe we should be doing. So those three areas around staffing, technology, and the way we're doing project management are three areas, Paul, where we're pushing.
A great foundation. Jami, why don't you pick up from there and tell us what you're doing that's new, what's working less well.
Okay. Well, I agree with the observation. I think we probably all do that lawyers and law firms by nature are not regarded as innovative. And I think that the key thing is for people to recognize that, in fact, there is a lot of innovative capability in all of our lawyers and what we do. What we do in the delivery of legal services to clients actually requires creativity and innovation. And the real question is how you channel that so that people are applying that same sort of creativity to the practice of law. And so what we did about a year ago when I took over as chair is we actually created an innovation committee, and we focused on creating a culture of innovation. And what I said to people is I want people coming up with new ideas and things out of the box, whether it has to do with the way we deliver services, whether it has to do with the things our clients are focused on. We should be thinking of fresh ideas. And to your point that an example is helpful, I was, I think, aided in that because about 15 years ago, we started an e-data group back when people thought we were crazy for doing that, sort of an e-discovery program. And that's been a great thing for our firm. And the point I used is that that was a big idea. And law firms need to have big ideas from time to time. I think where they get in trouble is it doesn't mean you abandon the most fundamental principles. As you pointed out, obviously, excellence in what you do is job one, but now it's the price of admission. I think David Leach said something on the last panel that, people just take for granted that you're going to deliver excellent legal services. So the question is how you can differentiate and distinguish yourself. With us, we've really tried to make the entire firm focus around our relationships with our clients. That's another thing everybody says that they do, but if you focus on everything you do, every communication, every training, every alignment in the firm around the issue of building long-term relationships with clients, that for us is the way we think that firms are going to be most effective, at least firms like ours. we're not looking for the one big case and then we're going to sue you 2 years later. And we're not looking to ditch practices that aren't the most profitable in the world. And we don't want to change ourselves every couple years in terms of, now we're going to focus on environmental, but now that's not hot, so now we're going to focus on something else. So given our firm's footprint, what we want to do is make sure that we're aligning all of our interests with what we're doing with our clients. So we've tried to apply some innovation to our client relationships. And a couple examples, we have an honors program with one of our key clients who's very focused on diversity. They were having trouble finding diverse lawyers, so we partnered together to recruit law students jointly. They spend 2 years with the client, and then they have a guaranteed spot at Morgan Lewis and they come work with us. And that's a way to help both us and that client work on diversity. We partner with clients on pro bono. We believe strongly in pro bono. A lot of clients want to actually contribute in the pro bono world, but don't have the infrastructure to do that. Like a lot of law firms, we focus on secondments, we do a lot of training. So I think we try to use sort of innovation and look at it from the profile of how can we invest in our client relationship by doing creative things that clients are interested in that maybe they want to do together with us. And that helps build the relationship and helps us get to know them. And then the last thing I'll raise is that we have had a very significant increased focus on industry expertise. So I think one of the people on the last panel was talking about the importance of really knowing your client, really knowing their industry. When I was a baby lawyer, one of the things I liked about litigation is one day I'd be working on something that involved an oil spill. Well, they didn't have those back then, but something like that. I tried my first case as a second-year associate in federal court for a hydraulic fluid manufacturer. And you would become an expert in a lot of different things. But very few people really dug into the industries and into their clients. And we really think in order to be able to do what our clients want us to do now, we need to really understand their industries, and we need to understand it on our nickel. So we have several industry areas now that we're focusing on where we pull teams together from across the firm, across practices, and across the globe to try to develop expertise in those industries, and then sometimes raise ideas to our clients that are things we think they should be thinking about. And then we ask them all the time, what do you want us to get smarter about? What should we be thinking about? What are you thinking about? What do we need to know? And we try to bake that in, by communicating that across the firm.
Great. Kim, what creative new things are going on at Akin Gump?
Sure. So it's in this instance good to be third because I can build on what both of you have said. I would adopt the principle that lawyers don't like to change, and I would also adopt the principle that it's all about the clients. So what we have really focused on, and the reason that it's important to go back to what you said is it's hard to get buy-in for change, but there is nothing like success to get you buy-in. So with a skeptical lawyer population, what we have done in the last couple of years is to take on projects that are focused on particular practice groups and particular clients and find ways that we can deliver value, generally with technology, but also with aspects of how we build the relationship. So a couple of examples. In our funds group, we have a very significant funds practice. About 5 years ago, we developed through process management and an investment in technology, a platform in which clients that want to start funds practices can do it on a fixed fee basis very effectively by putting data into a system and giving us the answers that we need to specific questions. There's an algorithm that generates something that approximates the initial documents. We then customize the work. But our clients who are starting funds are able to get an introduction to Akin Gump in a way that they never could before. And some of those, from little seedlings, large trees grow. Some of those clients then end up with much more sophisticated issues, and they remember how they got started. We've done also work similarly internally. So within, let's talk about a practice group where there's a lot of need for collaboration, a lot of new things are happening in the practice, hard to keep pace with it. we're all very tired of receiving emails saying, does anybody have any experience with reg whatever it is? And so what we did was we attempted to capture the answers to those questions. Essentially, it's like an internal Facebook within a practice area. So all of those questions you have to ask within the group. The answers get recorded. If you then are going to ask the same question again, you have a library of the answers that you had previously gotten to those questions. To the extent that you have particular documents that have turned out to be useful, there is access for everyone in the group, staff, lawyers, paralegals. They can all see, and a body of work is getting built that is hugely, hugely beneficial internally to everyone. But again, the focus there is that ultimately the client benefits, because you can very quickly get the answer to that question. You don't have to send another email and figure out whether you have the right answer to it. We have staff dedicated to making sure that the right answers are the ones that end up in the database. So fair amount of effort in investing in client solutions. In the area of sanctions, we've invested in technology that make it very easy for our clients to keep up with what's happening in sanctions. We've really made this client focused, and the good news about that is clients react positively, and then the lawyers react positively. And drawing on another common characteristic of lawyers, they are competitive. Mm-hmm. And so when they see that their colleagues have done some newfangled thing that has really gotten traction with a client, or that a Facebook internal platform that's sharing information is being rolled out successfully, it's resonating with the junior lawyers, it's resonating with the staff. Boy, I have an endless number of requests now to build new platforms and do this. And I think it gets people comfortable with the idea of innovating. Last thing I would say is we about 3 years ago hired a chief pricing officer. I think that's become more common, but a couple of years ago that was pretty new. He is devoted to running numbers in a consistent way, giving the help to everyone, training people on what profitability looks like, what the different ways of getting to profitability is, and he's client-facing. So that's been another innovation for us that I think, again, is a value add for our clients and for us. And I think that it's been well received in the client community.
Seth, what's new at Paul Hastings, and how are you overcoming this seemingly genetic resistance to change that we're hearing about among lawyers, even at the most accomplished corporate law firms?
Let's start with talking about genetics a little bit. You see the difference in our genetics. She found some nobility in going third. I find no nobility in going last. That's a genetic predisposition.
We'll let you go first on the next one.
All right. Thanks so much.
You'll feel better.
Maybe I'll approach it a little bit differently. I'll start the way Kim did, being client-facing, communicating value, chief pricing officer, and all that. But maybe I'll put Paul Hastings' journey into a slightly different paradigm. I think as the world changes and changes on all of us, we took a little bit of thought about innovation generally and what that means, as cliched a word as it is. And for us, the biggest part of that was overcoming some of the natural genetic resistance we had to lawyers who really, for 50 years, felt very good self-evaluating. They had their toolbox. They know how smart they are. Their colleagues know how smart they are. And that's what's most important. Not really like our clients, focusing on what their clients. So much of our work had been changing the way we looked at ourselves and changing the way we evaluated ourselves. Part of that had to do with breaking down the membranes to more effective communication and making people less change resistant. And that went for a firm like ours to breaking down any geographic boundary. Uniform pricing, uniform elections to partnership, uniform evaluation, uniform hours requirements. There's no geographic difference. Everything we do, other than some types of pro bono work, every type of incentive is globalized. It helps us articulate our strategy. It helps people own our strategy. We have no geographical profit analysis or anything like that in the firm. We got past another issue that helps us is getting past believing that all dollars or euros or renminbi are the same, and getting people to understand our strategy, making it their strategy. I think enables us to change more. So to be less cosmic and more specific, how did that manifest itself, and how is it manifesting itself in the future? Well, we started a key client program about 15 years ago. We called it the PH 50. Just to know how competitive we were, the reason we started is I was talking to Anthony Can at Linkletters, and they had something called the Linkletters 40. So we called ours the Paul Hastings 50. We only had 15 clients. It didn't really matter. I wasn't going to have a program with a smaller name than Linkletters. Would that be ridiculous? How unconfident. But in any event, what did we do? We took 15 clients we thought were promising, and each year devoted ourselves more and more to those clients. They started at 40 million, and today they're 240 million. And we did that by taking the ownership of those clients away from individuals, something that plagues all law firms, and toward the firm. And Kim's point, which is maybe the paradigm for getting people to be more trusting and innovative and aggressive, is success breeds success. We couldn't have done that had we not looked at ourselves in a more institutional way and judged ourselves not by efforts, which lawyers like to do. I worked so hard, but by results in those clients. So we began to align ourselves. The only other thing I'd say that's going on now, particularly in our firm, is this issue that Jami raised, industry association, having people respond to the client's imperative that they really know their business. We've done that a few ways. We've done that by joint training with clients and general counsel, where we get to learn about our associates and partners learn about their business. At the same time, we can help them with the legal implications of their business. So we don't have as much pretext before an assignment. We're in the same context. We identify more. We've started a program about 2 years ago. We're calling it client panels, but the industry panels. So a few times a year we are in Palo Alto or Houston or New York every 3 months, and we have a group of general counsel together, 4, 5, 6, 7. We broadcast it all around the firm, and we learn about those industry challenges and smartly come up with ways to help them meet them. We like bringing general counsel in the same industry together. We like having them in our office, and we like doing it regularly, and we like having dinner with them because it gets us thinking more about the way they feel about their industry. It's made us better technology lawyers. It's made us better finance lawyers. It's made us better energy lawyers. Not from our perspective, but from their perspective. That's what's happening at our firm.
And how many clients are actually in the PH 50 these days?
23.
So
Don't
you
tell
get in there.
Linkletters. Don't tell.
Okay.
But you know what we did though?
Yeah.
Because it was really embarrassing, and I feel so cleansed now admitting that.
Right.
But here's what we did to supplement that. And anybody can use these ideas now. They're in the public forum. To supplement that, we did what we called the Future 50. Which were clients with that potential to
How many were in the future 50?
A lot, because you didn't have anybody. It's like your request. It's like your request to. But anyway, so the PH 50 is building as future 50 clients become more. But it sounds like everything, like purely nomenclature, but it's become much more than that. It's been incredibly binding. So if I look at our top 15 clients, and for example, the lament that historically US-based firms face with how you take offices outside the US and integrate them through practice. We have as much work done proportionally outside the US on our leading clients as inside the US. And were it not for that program and people getting out of their comfort zone, we wouldn't have achieved that.
Very interesting. All right, if that clock is right, we have only 8 minutes and change. So I'm going to ask.
We didn't talk fast enough.
No. Everyone's doing great. Especially Seth, who came in and clean up there, just batting forth.
Thank you very much.
Which is where they put the best hitter.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I'm going to change the tone a little bit. This has been all, for the most part, BlackBerry, dead enders notwithstanding, relatively upbeat. I want to talk about anxiety in big law firms. I encounter partners, people in management of big law firms who will sometimes, surely off the record, admit to me, we're doing fine right now, but we're a lucrative partner group or two away from a total disaster in our firm. What you have seen at some of the other great brand name firms that have not just struggled but actually collapsed is a sudden fleeing for the doors. What do you do at each of your firms to make sure that you are secure against that day when some couple dozen key lawyers decide to jump across the street to an equally august law firm, then raising questions in all the other practice groups, should we be here or should we be looking for a new deal? And Seth, since you were so eager, we're going to start with you on that question.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I wouldn't use the word in the context of the law business today, secure, because I think in any business,
right.
It's like watching somebody on Squawk Box talk about their stock and saying, I like my stock price. No CEO ever is going to say that. So maybe the answer is less anxious, because anxiety can be like good cholesterol, right? Anxiety can be positive. I think what we do is
that's why you run the law firm, right? Because you turn things around like that.
Think so? But in any event, I think the answer is continually to broaden the number of practices that drive our profitability and value, and to begin, I told you about the PH50, and I can tell you about lots of other initiatives at some other time that depersonalize those practices, that make them more institutional. I think, though, that the way to make people more secure is basically, people leave for different reasons, is to make the firm confident about the future of the firm and the future of the institution. And to not forget that it's not Thoreau's pond. That commitment to excellence, that commitment to product, commitment to the strategy has to be wrapped around a sense of financial progress. And no amount of rationalization real financial progress, not accounting progress necessarily, no amount of rationalization should separate those two things.
Kim, how about you? What do you do to make your people feel more secure?
So similarly, I mean, I think I would call it the post-Dewey era, but obviously there were issues before Dewey to learn plenty of lessons from. I think there were two things that were specific that we took away from that experience. One was to make sure that your partners felt comfortable about the financial status of the firm, and coupling that with a high level of transparency. So we were transparent, but we broadcast, we are being transparent. Any question anybody has, we are prepared to answer it. We created an audit committee, which we did not have before, which meets on a monthly basis. They participate, they speak directly to our auditors. They participate in our management committee meeting. When we talk about where we are in financial performance, we send out a very significant amount of monthly financial information. We send out an MD&A for those that don't want to look at everything. And we really have invested in making people feel like this is a secure platform. But the other piece that I think is important, and it's kind of the opposite of the data and kind of analysis piece, it's a culture. So I spend a huge amount of my time making sure that people feel attached to Akin Gump, and whether that is by spending 200 nights on the road, or whether it's by making sure that I have a list every month of who do I want to reach out to, who needs to feel committed, who should I put in charge of an initiative, because that makes people feel committed. All of the things that connect people and make them feel more invested in Akin Gump every day of the week is what makes people say, right, you know what, I have so much good going on here. I'm going to stay here, even when Paul Hastings calls and says, we have a great idea.
Well, not in that case.
Right.
Jami, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, but I want to focus on the culture piece a little bit differently, because I think people move for a lot of different reasons, but there are two that are predominant. One is a lack of confidence in the firm, in their finances, in their strategy, and where they're going. And the cure for that is communication and transparency but also staying grounded. A lot of firms have gotten into trouble because they decided that they needed big fancy offices or things in far-flung places, or they were going to promise people a whole lot of money to buy a practice. And when you start to play with your finances that way and you lose the focus that this is a partnership, we're all in here to do a great job for our clients. When you take your eye off that ball, it actually creates a lack of confidence. And sort of, I think it's really important for law firms to understand their roots, understand their own culture, and reinforce that. And communicating that is important. But I also think the other reason people leave is compensation. And you have to have a culture around compensation. We've chosen in our firm at Morgan Lewis not to have a metrics-driven compensation model. We have a subjective compensation model, and we spend 3 months every year on compensation. It's not a black box. No one person decides it. There's a committee that's chaired by me that has 3 managing partners and 3 elected members. And I think we get a very high satisfaction rating from our partners because people believe that we really look at, know, and understand their contributions. And I think that creates the kind of connectivity that Kim is talking about too. But everybody in our firm knows that you get ahead by having a team behind you, and it's part of your job as a partner to advance and advocate for people in the team. So you don't get ahead by saying I, or my client. There's no such thing as my client. The culture of the firm is that we're all in this together. And I think you have to reinforce that all the time. And if your culture is only money, there's not enough money in the world to keep people any place. So, you know, a lot of great firms have suffered, I think, from forgetting that fact.
Yeah, I agree. I'll close this out.
You wrap it up, absolutely.
I see there's 0 minutes left.
Right.
So,
which just means that your comments are almost infinitely pronounced.
It means that
They're taking place without in time and
You have an
space.
unlimited amount of
it
time.
means that lunch is next.
Exactly.
Paul, is what it means.
Right.
Again, I would say ditto. At the end of the day, we're lawyers. And I think, without passing judgment on the Dewey issue and what happened there and other firms.
Well, a jury's about to pass.
Yeah,
some
exactly,
judgment.
right. Somebody else is going to do that. But
Not for a while.
I do think there has been this effort, and it's interesting that we can tie it to innovation. This effort to innovate, which some people translated into absolutely just being bigger and chasing only the issue of being more economically, be able to pay the most money to the more people. Those are all, of course, being economically grounded is critical, as Jami says. You've got to have a comp system that's going to reward people, or people are not going to stay. You have to have a place where people are confident about the future. How do you build that? In our firm, we pay an enormous amount of attention to the issue of culture. We talk a lot about it endlessly. I like what Kim says about spending a lot of time walking around, flying around, on the phone, et cetera, talking to partners, because at the end of the day, a law firm is a personal services enterprise, and it is by definition fragile. It's not tied up in some fancy office. It's not about, it's the assets, as we all know, are the people sitting in the walls of those buildings, and the culture. What holds that together? We could spend an hour on this subject, and I think you would hear repeatedly that emphasis on culture, knowing who you are, and not getting away from that. And in the context of that, and that's where we started this discussion, Paul, is, for example, in our firm, where there's this unbending commitment, it's in the blood, to public service and pro bono work, that we can live with that, but we also have to recognize that we have to, in that space, still innovate. But we can't deviate from that. Again, it's a fragile business model, and as healthy as any of our firms are right now, and we are fortunate to be very healthy right now, but all firms face the prospect that it's a personal services enterprise. We don't sell light bulbs like one of our good clients does, or we don't sell airplane engines or automobiles. We sell our know-how, and to make sure we have a glue that's holding that together for us, our culture is everything.